Good morning, friends and enemies. It's Monday, 12 p.m. Eastern time. Every single Monday, we go live recapping everything that happened over the Sunday slate of games, as well as Thursday Night Football, as you can see on the screen. We talk about snap counts. We talk about route run. We talk about injuries. We talk about talking about things, all right? This is what we do. We recap everything from a fantasy football perspective. Anything that happened that I think is relative going forward needs to be talked about, okay? We will start with Thursday Night Football. And in this video in particular, I'm going to do something a little bit different, and I'm going to put a number rating, 1 to 10, my worry level about a particular player on each team. So I'm gonna pick someone on all of the teams that played this weekend. I think it was 28 of them. We had 4 teams on bye. And I'm going to try to pick the most polarizing player, the one that I think has the most questions in fantasy football right now, and then give them an overall worry rating going into the fantasy football playoffs, or trustworthy rating, I guess I should say. So 1 to 10. 1, not trusting at all. 10, would leave my baby with him. All right, so we'll start off with Dallas and Detroit. Detroit gets a huge win, 44-30, keeping their playoff hopes alive, basically crushing the Cowboys' playoff hopes. Biggest takeaway for the Cowboys is obviously CeeDee Lamb's concussion. Now, he's got 10 days to clear because they played on Thursday Night Football. Typically, in a normal seven-day stance, you would be around 50-50 to clear, usually less than that based on the data this year. But since he has the extra 3 days and he's got 10 days to clear, I think there's a decent chance that he will be back in Week 15 when the Dallas Cowboys play the Minnesota Vikings at home. So good news-ish for CeeDee Lamb owners, at least. Best case scenario for a concussion is that you have 10 days in between. Now, if CeeDee doesn't play, if he doesn't suit up, and I will say another thing based on the reaction, like CeeDee's concussion looked really bad, but you can't tell how significant a concussion is just based off the way things look or how hard your head hit the ground or X, Y, or Z, right? They're all different. So trying to predict that his is worse than anyone else's, I feel like is a waste of time. He was going crazy first half. Almost all of his production was first half, and then concussion happened. Then Ryan Flanoy, where I didn't know his name was Flanoy, like it literally rhymes with annoy, and all of a sudden, like the R is just silent now. This actually kind of pisses me off. It's something that I'd love to just fucking be really angry about right now, is how like announcers will, and it always happens. The reason it always feels like it happens in primetime games right out of nowhere is a lot of times the announcers spend, the week or the days leading up to it with the teams, getting to know the personnel, right? Like when you're the Thursday Night Football crew and you've got to announce this game in front of the entire world, you spend that entire week prepping and meeting the players and learning the players and XYZ, all that kind of good stuff. You come across these things that you didn't know prior, and then it seems like when they get onto the actual broadcast themselves, they have all these little nuggets that we never would have known, right? And they just keep doing them and saying them and repeating these things over and over again, which is why it gets exponentially more fucking annoying, because it's always in primetime games where that's the only one you can actually watch. You don't really hear it often in Red Zone because Scott's just sitting there in one fucking room the whole time. These guys are prepping for this specific game. So fuck Ryan Flanoy. I didn't mean that. He's actually a pretty good pickup if CeeDee Lamb misses. This is now the second week that we've seen him kind of blow up without CeeDee Lamb, right? Back in week, I think it was 5 against the Jets, he had a similar stat line. I think it was 6 for 114 with CeeDee out. So if CeeDee's out, Flanoy's a decent flex play. Minnesota's not an easy matchup to throw the ball against. George Pickens obviously becomes the one. I will say the other storyline in this game is George Pickens. Like, what the fuck are we doing out there? Like, he had to have had the flu. There's just no way you put that sort of effort onto film when you are fighting for a playoff life. There was like 5 separate routes that he just didn't feel like running. And I get that's where Dak Prescott has like hesitancy throwing the ball sometimes, because I don't know if you could trust George Pickens to run these fucking routes all the time. But, CeeDee's out. Obviously, you're firing up George Pickens, and he would be the player that I'm looking at on the trustworthy scale. Overall, he's been dynamite this year. He's done it with CeeDee, without CeeDee. So I think he's probably the most polarizing player on the team right now, and I would definitely go with a heavy 8 out of 10, 8.5 out of 10 for George Pickens going into the fantasy playoffs going forward. Detroit side of things, Jahmyr Gibbs goes crazy. David Montgomery has a good game. I don't think there's really anything to take away here. Amon-Ra St. Brown was extremely questionable going into the game, ends up suiting up 6 for 92 on 9 targets. So not a ceiling game, but a great floor game for you. Jameson Williams has a good game as well. Isaac Tesla, another one of ours. 3 targets, 2 for 20 and a touchdown. That feels like his normal game line. Like he's going to finish the year with 17 catches, 11 touchdowns, and fucking 113 yards. I don't know. Is there any questionable players like on this team? Like David Montgomery, you don't want to be starting. Jameson Williams, I guess we'll put him in there. I'd say trustworthy level for JMO. I would put him at like 7.5 as well. Feel great about having him going forward. I will say on the defensive side of things for Detroit, they just keep losing players, man. It's like year in and year out, they continue to have this high potent, high scoring offense that's dynamite. It's versatile. It's electric. And then they just keep losing players. So Terran Arnold got put on the IR. Brian Branch tore his Achilles. So, like, again, this is just going to be a defense that you're going to be able to score points and move the ball again with how banged up their secondary is. They play the Rams next week in LA, so that should be a great game. Moving to the Seahawks and the Falcons. The Seahawks beat the shit out of us, not surprisingly. Not a huge takeaway. It was 6-6 at half, and then they just ran away with things. We had return touchdown. We had Sam Darnold and JSN just connecting on every single level there. Those are really, I mean, JSN's kind of the only startable player right now. I would say the guy that I'd put into the polarizing category would be Kenneth Walker. And realistically, in terms of trustworthy level for him, I really put him at like the schedule. You got Indy, the Rams, and Carolina. So you got two pretty good matchups here. I would say Kenneth Walker right now, trustworthy level out of 10, probably like a 5 at best. We just keep seeing the splits here. And in games where they dominate, like, it just never ends up coming to fruition where he has a big game, unfortunately. They have very odd game scripts all the time. On the flip side, not really much to talk about here. They just need Drake London back badly. And I will say they play on Thursday night. So it is a quick turnaround. Drake London did not practice at all last week. So I wouldn't say I'm overly optimistic about Drake London returning for their Week 15 game against Tampa Bay at home. But obviously things can change. We'll see practice reports today, tomorrow, Wednesday, whatever. Obviously stay in tune with the waiver wire video I put out tomorrow. We do the running back rankings Wednesday, wide receiver rankings Thursday. So you'll have a lot more information about Drake London in that time span. Kyle Pitts, another good game, 6 for 90. He can be started against Tampa Bay next week if Drake London misses another game. Trustworthy level. Player I'd look at, like, obviously you're starting Bijan Robinson. I guess Drake London would probably be the player here, right? Because he's going to be coming back from the knee injury. And that's a knee injury that's really fucked up some people, man. Like Brock Bowers. We've had some other players this year that have dealt with it. Overall, they get Tampa Bay. So if he's not back for then, he does get Arizona and then the Rams. So trustworthy level, I think I'd probably put Drake London around like a 6 to a 6.5, just because, like, he might need 1 week to ramp up, and then all of a sudden you're playing against the Rams. So I put him at like a 6, 6.5, still in your lineup most likely, but there are some reasons to be pessimistic just about the offense overall. Obviously, Kirk Cousins is like incapable of throwing for 200 yards. We have the Bills and the Bengals here. Great game, snow game, advertisement, get out of my face hole. Bills win 39-34 and essentially knock the Bengals out of the playoffs. Josh Allen, ridiculous game. 251, 3 through the air, 9 for 78, and a touchdown on the ground. He is fantasy's quarterback one for, it seems like, the 4th straight season. Any big takeaways on this side of the ball? We did get Dalton Kincaid back, so him and Dawson Knox obviously exploded because Cincinnati's defense against tight ends is the worst of all time at this point here. So, yeah, I mean, that's just an every week start for whoever's playing against Cincinnati. Next week, they have the Baltimore Ravens. So you've got both Andrews and Isaiah Likely as streaming options. And then they get Miami. So you got Darren Waller, Arizona. Trey McBride might single-handedly win fantasy championships in week 17. On the flip side, Joe Burrow played out of his fucking mind. T. Higgins played out of his mind despite not even having a mind. I'm pretty sure T. Higgins got concussed at least 3 times in this game, coming off of a concussion from last week. Regardless, making one-handed catches, didn't even matter. 6 for 92, 2 touchdowns. Jamar Chase, another disappointing game, 5 for 44. Just, I don't know. Him and Joe Burrow just, like, are not on the same page right now. You know, you could put it towards weather concerns. He is getting shadowed by the opponent's wide receiver ones, which does open things up for T. Higgins, obviously. Chase Brown does get into the end zone twice. Involved in the passing game as always. 12 for 23 on the ground, despite having a great matchup on paper against the Buffalo Bills. Run defense, but again, you know, with games like this where it's snowing and the weather's like crazy, it's very hard to predict. Like, it's never just how it goes on paper. It's never like, oh, this is their weak point, this is where we should attack. Very rarely does that end up happening. Like, even James Cook ended up with a good game, 18 for 80 on the ground, but like in a normal game stance, probably good temperature, good weather, whatever, James Cook probably goes like 20 for 160 against the Bengals' putrid run defense. But yeah, deflating loss for the Cincinnati Bengals here. And I guess if I'm choosing two players from this game, who's like the most polarizing player on both sides? Because like Burrow's in your lineup, T. Higgins in your lineup, Jamar Chase is in your lineup. I guess Chase Brown, I feel good about Chase Brown. I think he's up to RB12 on the year right now. So he ends up sneaking back into RB1, an RB1, I guess, category here. They get Baltimore, they get Miami, they get Arizona over the next 3 weeks. So 3 really good matchups for Chase Brown and the Bengals run game. I would give his trustworthiness a level of like 8 out of 10. Let's look at the snap counts between him and Samaje Perine, because that's kind of been a talking point recently about Perine coming back from the high ankle sprain and how his involvement's going to impact Chase Brown. We did see it go to 2/3 to 1/3 in terms of the snap counts here. Chase Brown, 66%. Samaje Perine at 38%. Still getting the most carries, still running the most routes. You do just see Samaje Perine start to clip off a little bit of those long down and distance, the very obvious passing situations. Though Chase Brown can, play those snaps as well, as we've seen. He's their goal line back. He gets a lot of passing work. So Chase Brown's just been really, really good in games where Joe Burrow's there, Joe Flacco's there, everyone but Jake Browning pretty much. So Chase Brown's still very much the guy in this backfield. If you guys ever want to check out these numbers, of course, they're brought to you by Fantasy Life. FantasyLife.com has the utilization report. They got a million other things on here. If you're in the Dynasty world right here, you can't even see the top menu. That's unfortunate. Actually, let me... There you go. You can see the top menu here. You've got fantasy. If you're in guillotine leagues, best ball, dynasty, DFS, betting, whatever you want, they have it here for you. But you obviously know I use a utilization report, which is my favorite tool in all of fantasy football. So if you go to fantasylife.com and you get a Fantasy Life Plus subscription on their website, they're going to give you 20% off if you use code BDGE when you check out. All right. So fantasylife.com, code BDGE when you get a subscription, which will get you access to the utilization report. Best tool in the world. Let's move to, I didn't say anything for the Bills. Cook, you're starting. Allen, you're starting. Let's put Shakir as the guy here. Kincaid, I feel good about. Shakir goes 2 for 16, does catch a touchdown, so up and down performance. I think he's been the best receiver by far here. I mean, the leading receiver was Gabe Davis with 2 for 21 through the air in this game. Shakir, trustworthiness level, they go against New England, Cleveland, Philly. So 3 tough matchups. I'd put Shakir at like a 5.5 based on that. When Kincaid is healthy, they want to move the ball through their tight ends and their running back and Josh Allen's legs. So Shakir, I think he's definitely a wide receiver 3, but that's a tough slate for opponent wide receivers throughout the playoffs. Moving to the Titans and the Browns, who would have thought this would be like literally the best game on the fucking slate? Unbelievable performance by Shedeur Sanders, although it culminates in a loss for the Browns. Titans 2-11. Gives the New York Giants the first overall pick in the NFL draft this year, as the records stand. Cleveland Browns 3-10 here. On the Titans side of things, story was obviously Tony Pollard. Cam Ward had a very underwhelming statistical game in this one. Tony Pollard, 25, 161, 2 touchdowns, was ripping off big plays throughout. Way more fool's gold than anything else. Of course, we have the entire season of a sample size of Tony Pollard. And I do think the Malik Collins loss to the Cleveland Browns defensive line clearly showed up in this one. He's been one of the best run defenders in the NFL up to this point in the middle of the defensive line there. So Cleveland maybe not as scary of a defensive team to attack on the ground going forward. On the flip side, a lot more to talk about. Shedeur obviously has a career game, 364, 3 touchdowns through the air, 3 for 29 and a touchdown on the ground, despite there being some weather in this game. Like, played phenomenal, man. Got to give it to him. Was the Tennessee Titans pass defense. So do I believe that this is real? No. They play at Chicago next week. They play Buffalo and then Pittsburgh. So much tougher matchups going forward. He struggled against San Fran. He struggled against Las Vegas Raiders. So good to see, cool to see, but let's be real here. Jerry Jeudy does find the end zone. I would say the story here is David Njoku sprains, I believe, his I can't remember what CL at this point, MCL, PCL on his 1-yard touchdown catch, and he's probably going to miss some time, which opens up the world to Harold Fannin here, man. 8 for 114, a touchdown on 11 targets. He is so good. If you've got him in a dynasty league, you are flying high right now. He is going to be awesome in the future. I don't know how long they're going to hold on to David Njoku for. Fannin's clearly like the next kind of breakout rookie tight end this year. They got such a good class between Tyler Warren, Colson Loveland, Harold Fannin. We've got some other guys that are like, showing signs, haven't emerged yet. But if we look at the Browns snap counts, Once again, it's all Harold Fannin. Njoku left, obviously, but that has been the case over the last like 3 weeks. If you go from 12 to 14, Harold Fannin's running 87% of the routes, seeing 28% of the targets in this offense. That is like high-end wide receiver numbers. 28% of the targets in a team's offense. So even if it is Shedeur Sanders, the one delivering him targets, Harold Fannin Jr. is still a fucking sicko right now. And if Njoku's out and he just consolidates all the tight end production, he's going to be an easy streaming, almost must-start guy going forward week in and week out. So love that for Mr. Fannin Steen. If we're looking at the trustworthy scale, I think the name for Tennessee would obviously have to be Tony Pollard going forward. They're at San Francisco, Kansas City, New Orleans. So Tony Pollard, I would give him about a 3.5 to 4 out of 10 in terms of trustworthiness. Like, it's good to see that they gave him all the carries and they trusted him in this game, so it'll probably be the split going forward. But in terms of effectiveness, he's been so bad this year, so don't really trust them in that aspect. For the Browns, I mean, I still like Judkins. I think he's extremely trustworthy. Harold Fannin, I think, is up to like a 7 out of 10. I say Jerry Jeudy has had some good games with Shedeur Sanders and missed a long touchdown last week, so he would have had another big game with him. I would still put him at probably like a 4 to 4.5 out of 10 there. Vikings and the Commanders. So, after the Vikings get their shit pushed in last week, shut out by the Seahawks, they flip things around. J.J. McCarthy makes his return, and they beat the Commies 31-0. J.J. McCarthy, 163-3 through the air. So one of, if not his best game of the season, efficiency-wise. Does take 4 sacks, but looks great, slinging the ball, looks fine. He did exactly what they needed him to do. Addison goes 4 for 62. Unfortunately, Justin Jefferson goes 2 for 11 in this one. And at this point, I just don't know how we can trust really anyone. They do have a great slate of matchups going forward. They're at Dallas, at the New York Giants, and then against Detroit. So honestly, 3 phenomenal matchups. I just don't trust J.J. McCarthy. Like, even in a great game, he throws for 163 yards. Aaron Jones, who was questionable coming into this game with a shoulder injury, ends up playing, leading the backfield in carries, 14 for 76. They did kind of go drive by drive in this game, him and Jordan Mason, and both of them ran well because the Commanders' defense is horrendous. So that wasn't necessarily a big surprise, but yeah, just should be noted because Aaron Jones was questionable coming into the game. And then in terms of trustworthy level, based off McCarthy's good game, Addison, Justin Jefferson, honestly, both of them, despite having good matchups, despite a semi-strong bounce back from McCarthy, I'd put both of them sub 5. Like, trustworthy level, like, yeah, you probably have to have Jefferson in your lineup because the matchup is so good and he's so talented, of course. And eventually they're going to have a game plan that runs through him. But I do think in these matchups, Dallas, New York, they're going to try to go very run heavy again. Like, even in this game, 34 carries to 23 pass attempts here. That's probably the split that Kevin O'Connell wants to have going forward. So Jefferson, I mean, I'd put him at like a fucking 3.5 right now. Addison, probably the same thing. Flip side, Jaden Daniels does start in this one. First game back from the elbow. What the fuck is that called? I can't think of the word where your elbow pops out. Dislocation. It was located in a distant place. That's what it was. And then he ends up leaving with another elbow injury. He kind of lands on it again. Apparently, though, from what I've gathered, it's not overly serious. He didn't like re-dislocate it and fuck it up for another 3 or 4 weeks. And also, from what I'm hearing, like, there's a possibility that he could actually play as soon as next week. It'll be a coaching decision. Just in terms from like an injury standpoint, there's a possibility that he could play next week. It'll be a coaching decision. They're 3-10. They're out of the playoffs. Like, not much to play for right now. Your franchise guy. So I think there's a good chance they just don't play him against New York next week. But just saying, the Jaden Daniels rest of season outlook, I don't think you're going to see him like be put on IR or anything like that. But it would mean another Marcus Mariota start against the Giants if he does miss. Rodriguez, JCM, split the backfield again. This is kind of exactly how we've seen it play out week in and week out. Terry, Debo, both down games because the passing game only threw for 108 yards in this one. So not great. Trustworthy scale for Washington. Let's go to the pass catchers. We have Terry, we have Debo. The Washington slate going forward, they're playing the Giants in 15, Philly in 16, Dallas in 17. So 2+ matchups there. I would say, I mean, I guess it depends who is the quarterback. I would put Terry trustworthy level. He had a good game last week. Debo's been like relatively consistent, I would say, in terms of targets. Like they both got 6 targets in a game where they only threw the ball 24 times. So both of them were seeing a 25% target share. Oh, Zach Ertz also tore his ACL, so he's going to be out for the rest of the year, which does condense the targets even more so towards those two there. So I would put both of them at around like a 5.5 to 6 in terms of a trustworthy level for the playoffs. And yeah, we can move forward, I believe. Dolphins and the Jets. The Dolphins beat up on the Jets here. Not a huge takeaway here. I would say Devon Achane is probably the biggest one for the Dolphins, having on his way to a monster day. 7 for 92, 13 yards per carry, and a touchdown in the first half. And then didn't even look like he got fucking hit. He got like wrapped up. His leg got wrapped up, and then he got hit on the sidelines, and he left with a rib injury. Apparently, this is not overly serious. Mike McDaniel said if they weren't beating the shit out of the Jets, that he could have returned in an emergency situation. So he might be like a little bit limited, maybe next week or throughout the week in practice. But breathe a sigh of relief here if you are an Achane owner that needs him for the playoffs next week. They play at Pittsburgh, then Cincinnati, Tampa Bay. So a good schedule going forward for Achane. But I expect him, as someone who owns him in my biggest league, I expect Devon Achane to be playing and be pretty much fine next week. Jalen Wright kind of filled in for him great, 24 for 107 and a touchdown on the ground. If Achane misses next week's game, then Jalen Wright would be a very, very high-end handcuff. In terms of owning him right now, I'm not going to go crazy here. I think when Achane's healthy, he's the guy. You can look at Jalen Wright the same way that you've kind of been rostering Ollie Gordon all year. It's like kind of useless if Achane is not banged up here. And also, I think if Achane does miss a game, then Jalen Wright and Ollie Gordon would probably split the backfield a little bit more than it was shown in this one here, and goal line goes anywhere. I don't know. So concern level, trustworthiness, Achane's a 10 out of 10. Jalen Waddle's pretty much like a 7 to 7.5 out of 10. He's been good way more often than not. Darren Waller's the other guy. He actually split routes with Greg Dulcich, 59% each, but I don't know how much of that was just like them beating the shit out of the Jets. So it's like, let's get our secondary players a little bit more run here. On the flip side, disaster game for the Jets. So you have Justin Fields, who's like ruled out with some like lower leg injury. So Tyrod Taylor gets a start again, of course. He ends up pulling his groin. So he's got a groin strain, which would normally sideline a player for like 2 to 3 weeks. Their rookie, Brady Cook, who is from Missouri, I believe, came in 14 for 30, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, just absolutely tanked the entire passing game. Just a brutal run out for the Jets here. I'm assuming they're going to let Brady Cook go out there, and I'm not going to make the joke of him cooking because it's just the shit ain't just going to happen like that. They play against who the fuck do they play? They're at Jacksonville next week, at New Orleans, then New England. So not a great matchup, not a great slate of matchups for the fantasy players in New York right now. It's not great. You can't trust anyone in the passing game, really. Like, this is the floor that an Adonai Mitchell or John Mechie can give you when their passing game throws for 140 yards, obviously. The player that we need to talk about is Breece Hall, obviously. 14 for 43 on the ground, still dominating touches, still dominating, the backfield work, of course. But this team is just so bad right now. And they play at Jacksonville, at New Orleans, New England. So none of those are easy matchups for opponent runners here. New Orleans Saints is fine, but I would say my concern level for Breece Hall, or my trustworthy level, 1 to 10, I'm gonna put him at like a 4.5 to 5. Like I don't feel great about him. I don't feel great about him if he's like definitely not as my RB1. If he's your RB2, I'm like, you could do worse, but he's gonna give you some floor games, man, and I don't love it. Saints, Bucks. Great game from Tyler Shuck out here. Maybe not through the passing game. 144, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception. But with his legs, 7 for 55, 2 touchdowns. Ends up getting it done. They get the win over the Tampa Bay Bucks. Devin Neal, this was a guy that I was telling people not to fade based off of the lack of production the week prior. He's just dominating the backfield work. 19 carries, 70 yards, 1 touchdown. Catches a pass for 14 yards. As long as Alvin Kamara is out, I think you can continue to roll with Devin Neal. They have such a good string of matchups going forward. Carolina at home, New York Jets at home, Tennessee Titans in week 17. So Devin Neal will be a nice RB2, I think, going forward here. Passing game is just, that's going to be a product of Shuck throwing for $144. So I would say in terms of trustworthy level, Olave, he's fine always for the most part. He's like a 7 or 8 out of 10. Just didn't go his way this week. Devin Neal would be the guy that I would say, yeah, I think I'm up to like a 7, 6.5 to 7 for him. I feel good about a guy that you probably just picked up off of the waivers based on the schedule, obviously pending Alvin Kamara's absence here. Tampa Bay Bucks, another brutal game for Baker Mayfield, another brutal game for Emeka Egbuka. Thursday night, they play the Atlanta Falcons, and it is trending like Mike Evans will likely make his return in that one. At worst, it'll be the week after that. But I think if I was a betting man, and I am, I'd put money on Mike Evans playing in week 15 now that they are like in a fist fight for their playoff lives with the Carolina Panthers. I think Mike Evans will return. And that'll make things messy here. I do like their schedule going forward. They get Atlanta, Carolina, Miami. When I say I fucking love that. Great for them. I would say Evans, I think at this point he's had enough time to like recoup himself and get back to normal state Mike Evans. I think he's going to be a solid like wide receiver, 16 to 22 in my rankings. Low end wide receiver 2 for now. Ibuka's probably going to drop down. I mean, he continues to see a shitload of targets, just playing uncharacteristic ball. Baker's missing him sometimes. He's dropping touchdowns, though. We all saw that touchdown he dropped in this game. Was raining a lot, weather, slippery maybe, a little bit thrown above him, so I can understand how it kind of slips through his hands, but you just got to make that play. And he's been bad now for like 6 out of the last 7 weeks, so very hard to trust him right now, despite the hot start to the season. So Ibuka's the guy I'm looking at right now. Trustworthy level, I would put him at like a 4 out of 10, maybe 4 out of 10, because I do think, listen, if Mike Evans is back and takes a little bit more attention away for the defense, then Ibuka might have some easier throws, easier routes, easier passes going his way there. Bucky Irving, another good game here, gets 17 touches, 80 yards from scrimmage, and scores once again. Jags and Colts. All right, so we have the Jags beating the shit out of the Colts here, 36-19. Story of the game, of course, is Daniel Jones tearing his Achilles. Will be out for the remainder of the season. Backbreaking for Indy fans, of course. Broke his leg a couple weeks ago, fractured his tibia a couple weeks ago, and obviously has not been the same. Hasn't really looked mobile, has aired a lot of passes, like wasn't the same player, but Daniel Jones compared to fucking Riley Leonard, world apart. Now, a lot to break down here. I'll start actually with the dynasty perspective. That was a nice little voice crack for you hoes out there that are preying on my downfall. I'll start with the dynasty perspective, and I'll tell you what I did. Very first thing I did this morning was wake up and send trade offers to all of the people in my leagues that own Daniel Jones for a second. Don't know if that's going to work. Haven't had one accepted yet, but I would absolutely look to go out. Obviously, this is for those in a Superflex league. Daniel Jones tears his Achilles. We've seen Kirk Cousins and Aaron Rodgers both tear their Achilles. Everyone's going to be different on their timeline. Those guys are a lot older than Daniel Jones is, obviously. Jones, I still think Indy's going to re-sign Jones. It might come at a lesser contract, less guaranteed money, less money overall. But I think they committed pretty significantly to Daniel Jones being the guy. They're obviously not drafting a quarterback with giving away their 2 first-round picks. I don't know, maybe they trade for a veteran. They kind of have the same thing that they did with Daniel Jones this year to like what he did to Anthony Richardson. I still think Daniel Jones gets re-signed, and I still think he's their starting quarterback next year. And we've seen a lot of players come back from Achilles tears now across different sports. Like I genuinely think Daniel Jones will probably be fine. Not within the next 6 months or anything, but like I think by halfway through next season, he's going to be similar to what he's playing in the first half of this season. They have a good team surrounding him. So like I'm of the mindset that like I think people are going to be very pessimistic about this injury, and they should be. It's obviously a very serious injury, but I think Daniel Jones will be fine. I think this is actually time to try to get him off of a contender in your league if you can. What this means for the quarterback situation for the remainder of the year. Now, we were in the office watching the games, and our immediate thought was like, oh, fuck, Anthony Richardson is about to be like a league winner down the stretch for fantasy teams that need a quarterback. A-Rich is still on the IR, recovering from that eye injury. Apparently, he got hit with like a workout band or something, and it really fucked up his eye. Like he fractured his orbital, and someone saw him, like physically saw him. I want to say it was the end of November, so like maybe 10 days ago, and they tweeted something out saying that like, yeah, it was being like, yeah, this is all I'll say. It was a really serious injury, and he's still clearly recovering from it. It sounds very pessimistic. It sounds very insidious, and it sounds like Anthony Richardson is unlikely to play again this year, or at least not close to returning. Again, he's still in the IR. They got to open his practice window, all that kind of stuff. So I don't think they plan on rushing him back just because Daniel Jones got hurt. I would imagine we're going to see Riley Leonard at least for the next couple of weeks. They get Seattle. They're in Seattle next week, San Francisco, Jacksonville. So 3 teams that are going to be playoff teams this year. Brutal end to the season here for the Colts. It's going to be a major downgrade, obviously, to Alec Pierce, Michael Pittman, Josh Downs. And I know they ended up having decent statistical games here, but a lot of that was like Jacksonville's up huge and just kind of playing that, here's dink and dumb, just don't beat us deep. Here's a bunch of like check down plays that you guys can rack up your yards on. But playing in a raw game going forward, I have very, very little confidence in these pass catchers to at least have consistency here. So, I mean, if we're looking at all the pass catchers in terms of trustworthiness going forward with Riley Leonard at quarterback, I think they're all going to be around like a 5 out of 10, if that. I think the big name to talk about, of course, is Jonathan Taylor. How big of a hit does this give him? I mean, he's going to be in your lineup every week. Obviously, he's a must start every week. I just think he's likely more of what we saw this game as compared to what we've seen up to this point in the season. I think the ceiling games are probably behind us, especially based on, playing at Seattle next week. Again, brutal matchup. Jacksonville in week 17, they're a pretty good run defense here. So, I think we're going to see 20 touches per game for Jonathan Taylor going forward. I think his efficiency will obviously dip because I think defenses will obviously play the run to a really, really heavy degree. So I think JT's probably, he's still very, very much a top 10 guy for me. I still think he'll score some touchdowns, maybe have a breakaway player too. But of course, you can't expect him to run the way that he did up to this point in the season without a quarterback that threatens the deep. Whoa. What the hell? Something just fell and scared the shit out of me. Stream is still live. We are still alive. There are 524 people in here and only 51 thumbs up. Where do y'all get off? Hit the fucking button that looks like this, please. You got 500 of you in here. Only 50 people hit the thumbs up button. That helps me on YouTube. It really does. It helps me in here mentally and stably. I got to close my window. How you doing? We're back. I forgot to put this light on, too. It's like I don't even care about you guys anymore. Fantasy regular season is done, and my brain just shuts off. All right, Jacksonville. Honestly, best game of the year from Trevor Lawrence. I'm not overly surprised. I think the Colts defense, I think a lot of people are probably going to overestimate teams playing well against the Colts defense. They are without likely their 2 top cornerbacks or top defensive players at this point. Sauce Gardner's obviously out with the calf strain. DeForest Buckner's been on the IR as well. He is a mammoth in between the tackles there on the defensive line. So I don't think the Indy defense is very good right now. So I'll just put that out there at first. Trevor Lawrence played well, though. 244, 2 touchdowns. Travis Etienne played great. Bashaw Tutin, I believe, suffered a concussion in this game. So that would be a major upgrade to Travis Etienne. Next week, he gets the New York Jets. Etienne's going to probably be ranked like as a top 5 fantasy running back if Bashaw Tutin misses. Brian Thomas Jr. actually played well for like the first time all year, it feels like. Only saw 6 targets, 3 for 87, but was making catches, tough contested catches, was like a big-time player in this one. Jacoby Myers continues to dominate targets here, 10 targets on 30 pass attempts from Trevor Lawrence, 4 for 39 and a touchdown. He just fits like a glove in this offense, the Liam Cohen offense, the type of player that Trevor Lawrence likes to throw to. Like Jacoby Myers, honestly, dude, he's like a top 15 guy at worst for me going forward. Should be noted that Parker Washington did miss this game with a hip injury, and he did practice in a limited fashion twice this week, so I do expect him to return, which does make things a little bit messy over the middle of the field, but it's the New York Jets. Everybody should eat in that one. Brenton Strange, 6 targets, 3 for 27. He did have a touchdown on a nice play action rollout play called back for something. I forget what it was. Holding maybe legal contact or some shit, but would have been a touchdown as well. So just strong performance by Jacksonville all around, and they're going to build more momentum beating the shit out of the Jets next week as well. Okay, so if we're looking at trustworthy level on this team, I think the guy to look at here would be Brian Thomas Jr. And as someone who owns him, yeah, he's still at like a 3 for me, despite this performance. Fuck that shit. Ravens and the Steelers. You want to talk about another shaky quarterback playing really fucking well? Aaron Rodgers. This was probably his best game of the season, just connecting left and right with DK Metcalf here. 7 for 148 on 12 targets. There was a lot that we could talk about in this game in terms of like the referees and who should have won and a caught ball in the end zone and penalties, but we don't give a fuck about that for fantasy football. Biggest takeaways here, I would say, from the Steelers side, it was good to see DK and Aaron Rodgers connect at a very high level, and maybe this makes that pair kind of ride some momentum into the fantasy playoffs. They get Miami and then Detroit, so 2 good matchups before they play at Cleveland in Week 17. Could see some bad weather there. Overall, does it boost my confidence for DK? I guess it probably makes Rodgers trust him a little bit more. So DK will be, instead of ranked as like the wide receiver fucking 40 going forward, maybe like the wide receiver 30 or something like that. The backfield is more messy though, because we have Kenneth Gainwell playing a lot, scoring a rushing touchdown. Jaylen Warren 8 for 13 on the ground. Kenneth Gainwell catching 6 passes, but Jaylen Warren does catch the 38-yard touchdown pass, though it was kind of like a broken play and it was just wide open down the sideline. So I don't know how predictive that is. Let's look at the snap count differences between the two of them in that backfield, though. Where are you, Steelers? Okay. So, I mean, this is over the last 3 weeks, or since week 11. We have a split of 52% of the snaps for Gainwell, 45% for Jaylen Warren. I think this overall is indicative of the split going forward pretty much, where Jaylen Warren takes the majority of rushing attempts. Kenneth Gainwell sees a nice chunk of the routes run. And as you can see, long down and distance, 2-minute drills. That's kind of all Gainwell. Let's look at this game in particular, though. Yeah, pretty much 50-50 exactly. Warren getting the rushes, Gainwell getting the routes, all that good stuff. So, yeah, I mean, going forward, who would I rather own? Still Jaylen Warren, I think. Pittsburgh, their next 3 games are Miami, Detroit, Cleveland. So I still, that's 2 tough matchups at the end there on the road. But Miami next week should be nice for Warren. Yeah, overall, I think they're both like low-end RB2s, high-end flex plays-ish. Because of how involved they are in the offense. I believe Darnell Washington suffered a concussion in this one as well. Doesn't really mean much for us in fantasy. Flip side, Lamar looked back-ish for the first time. Scores a rushing touchdown. Scores a throwing touchdown for the first time in fucking weeks. Probably should add multiple to Isaiah Likely, but they call that one drop in the end zone. Zay Flowers gets back to relevance, 8 for 124. Through the air here, Derrick Henry, 25 more carries, cannot get into the end zone. Not much of a takeaway here. They do play the Jets next, or the Bengals next week, which would give me some confidence to fire up Likely, confidence to fire up Andrews. Let's actually look at the routes run between the tight ends here. Okay, well, we still have Andrews running 86% of the routes, Isaiah Likely 52%. So just doesn't ever feel like they're going to flip that. Andrews gets the extension, surprisingly. Why don't you just give that to fucking Likely and let him run it up next year? Let's talk about confidence level. All right, let's actually go back to the Steelers. So I would say Jaylen Warren confidence level, like the confidence level in Warren is almost like strictly matchup based now. It's like if I feel good that the Steelers offense is going to be able to put up a good game, then I feel good about him. So I guess I put that at like a 5.5. Gainwell's probably at like a 5. DK Metcalf's probably at like a 5.5 to 6 as well. Because every time Metcalf has had a good game this year, which is not often, he just ends up reverting back to like his 3 for 50 games. On the other side, Lamar, I think, would be the player to talk about here. Confidence level going forward. They get, again, Cincinnati next week, New England, Green Bay. So 2 tough matchups, 1 great matchup next week. I would say as Lamar continues to get more healthy and continues to run the ball a little bit more, I'm still concerned. Like, he doesn't look 100%, but I would put him at the confidence level, the trustworthy level of, let's put him at a 6.5 out of 10. Broncos and the Raiders. Not any huge takeaways here for the Broncos side. RJ Harvey continues to dominate in J.K. Dobbins' absence. That was extremely predictable. 23 touches, 100 yards, and a touchdown. The matchups the last 2 weeks could not have been better for him. Going forward, they will play Green Bay, Jacksonville, Kansas City. So we will ratchet up the difficulty level a little bit. But in this type of usage, RJ Harvey is a rock solid RB2 with upside weekly, given his status. The only other thing to point out here is Pat Bryant has jumped Troy Franklin in terms of routes run for the second consecutive week, but most of his routes are just kind of like non-valuable slants. He's like a reliable target for Bo Nix, and maybe we do see like a pop-out game eventually, but right now I don't think you could really trust anyone besides Courtland Sutton in this offense. So talking trustworthy score, RJ Harvey I think right now is probably at like a 7.5. I would say Sutton's probably closer to like 6.5. But still 10 targets on Bo Nix's dropbacks feels good. On the flip side, yeah, you can't really trust anyone here besides Brock Bowers. Geno Smith hurts his hand, so Kenny Pickett comes in. But I do think Geno Smith probably plays going forward unless they just want to make a coach's decision where we're like, let's just see what we got with Pickett. Another bad day from Genty, who just gets eaten up behind the line of scrimmage. Genty's the guy that I would probably look towards in terms of the trustworthy level. They're at Philly next week, at Houston after that, before finally a good matchup against the Giants in week 17. Genty's trustworthy level, I would put that at like a 4 tops right now, just based on the offensive line played, is horrendous. Chicago, Green Bay. Great game here for football fans in general. Green Bay takes it down 28-21. Caleb Williams still a little bit shaky in the passing game. 186, 2 touchdowns. Fast as fuck, boy. He so good at using his legs. Sometimes I think he dips out of the pocket probably a little bit too quickly, more quickly than he needs to. Just a complete split again, once again through the backfield, 13 for 63 for Swift. Monangai, 14 for 57, continues to just rotate drives here. Both of them played well. The Packers are a good run defense. No Rome Odunze in this one, dealing with the stress fracture in his foot, which likely keeps him out multiple weeks. Luther Burden, 4 for 67. What we did end up seeing was Burden didn't really see an increase in routes run here. It was Alameda Zacchaeus who basically took Rome Odunze's role. Didn't amount to anything production-wise, but Burden still around, that 68 to 70% route range, but did see a very high involvement rating here. 21% of the team's targets, 26% of the air yards. So I think the guy that I'm most excited for, honestly, in this passing game right now, I like Burden. I like Colson Loveland a lot here. 4 for 29, scores a touchdown here. They play Cleveland next week, Green Bay at home the week after that, then San Francisco. So not a great schedule by any means. But if Rome Odunze continues to miss time, obviously the target's going to be consolidated. DJ Moore is like a 0 at this point. So yeah, I mean, Luther Burden, I just think there's too much volatility to the passing offense to really rely on anybody on a week-to-week basis here. But I think Burden can be flexed. I think Loveland can be started in the tight end position if you need to as a top 12-ish guy. But as you can see, the upside of this offense just kind of relies on Caleb Williams having some upside games with his arm, and he just still misses a lot of too many easy throws for me right now. And then on the Packers side of things, Jordan Love really plays out of his mind. He just connects with Watson and Bo Melton on just all these deep passes that end up getting taken to the crib. So he only ends up with 25 passing attempts here, but Watson looks like the alpha. Biggest takeaway here, I would say, is Jaden Reed, first game back. 4 targets, 4 catches, 31 yards, 2 carries, 22 yards. He assumes the role immediately of the starting slot wide receiver, basically the role that he had in week 1, week 2, prior to breaking his collarbone. But as you can see, 65% of the routes in this one, 73 for Dobbs, 81 for Watson. Dobbs is basically a 0 in the box score at this point. But good to see that they really wanted to get Jaden Reed involved, and he is the starting slot wide receiver. That being said, there's still a lot of guys in this offense. He doesn't see a lot of valuable targets. I'm sure those will come eventually, but Watson is playing so well right now that he's the one. So Jaden Reed is a guy that I would look at as yeah, he's a wide receiver 3. I think you could play him going forward, but there's definitely a floor here. Oh, trustworthy scale. For the Bears, it's crazy. For as good of a team as they are, and what's even crazier? So they're 9-4 now. Going into this game, they were the first seed in the NFC. They are now the 7th seed. They are the last team into the playoffs right now as a 7th seed in the NFC. Their point differential on the year, they are 9-4. Their point differential, just meaning if you combined all their games together, what is the score of all the points they've scored versus all the points their opponents have scored? -1. They were +6 going into this game. Add 7 to the other side of the ledger, -1. Caleb Williams and the Bears, -1 point differential despite being 9-4. And I think that's an honest assessment, a truthful assessment of the Chicago Bears. They've had some luck break their way. They are still a very flawed football team, but it was good to see them compete well with the Packers here. Trustworthy scale, I mean, everyone in the passing game, I would say, is like sub 5 right now. They're hard to predict. Rushing game, I would say Swift and Monangai are both like, they're another one where it's like, yeah, when they have a good ground game going, they're gonna go crazy. But this is an outcome that I expect to happen pretty often, where they both like get a decent amount of work, but because they don't score touchdowns, they have shitty fantasy outcomes for you. So I would put both of them at like a 5, and I would say like Monangai 5.5, Swift probably a 6. On the flip side, I mean, I feel great about Jacobs. Christian Watson's at like a 7.5, 8 right now. Maybe Reed's the guy we're looking at. I would say Reed's probably in that like 4.5 to 5, maybe 5 to 5.5 trustworthy level. Rams Cardinals. The Rams beat the brakes off the Arizona Cardinals. Stafford 281, 3 touchdowns. The ground game continues to flourish, especially against these shitty defenses. That's what we've seen the last 2 weeks. Like we've seen Blake Corum has now averaged over 10 yards per carry in 2 straight games, which is crazy. They're splitting drives, landed in Blake Corum scoring some touchdowns. That being said, I would still much rather own Kyron Williams. I would almost look at Blake Corum in the same vein that I look at Kyle Monangai, where it's like, the offense is going to be relatively substance filled. You know what I mean? Like they're going to have a lot of depth to them, and they're going to score a lot of points, and they're going to move the ball, and they're going to run a lot of plays, which will result in their running backs getting a decent amount of touches right now. But I would look at Blake Corum as like he's the number 2, but not far behind, similar to Kyle Monangai. So when they have good games and they roll up the score on their opponents, he's going to have good games, which is what we've seen the last 2 weeks. The Rams over the next 3 weeks play Detroit, Seattle, Atlanta. So don't know how much success they're going to have on the ground going forward, but Stafford, Puka's a GOAT. Devontae Adams finally had a down game, but I guess if I am talking about trustworthy level, it would have to be in the backfield here. I would say Kyron for me is still at like a 7, and I would say Blake Corum's probably at like a 5. I think it's easy to get ahead of ourselves on Blake Corum over the last 2 weeks, but if you do look at his production, like he's had some floppy flop games prior to those, and when you're playing Detroit, when you're playing Seattle, like I think that's a chance where we could see those games. Flip side, I mean, it was just Jacoby, it was just Michael Wilson. Michael fucking Wilson is literally Jerry Rice. I'm not gonna lie, it's probably time to take the victory lap. I have about 70 tweets from Michael Wilson's draft class talking about how he was the most underrated wide receiver in this draft class. And I never got to celebrate it because he was never very good at the NFL. But now he's the GOAT. Now he's the best player of all time in the history of fucking planet Earth. 11 for 142, 2 touchdowns, another 16 targets. The question becomes, obviously, Marvin Harrison Jr. What happens when he returns? Will he return? Didn't practice at all this previous week. They play at Houston next week, so much tougher defensive battle, obviously, for all parties involved there. Marvin Harrison, I don't know. From what I gathered, like the heel injury is not overly serious and should not be a long-term thing. But the fact that he didn't practice at all, puts a little bit of skepticism towards his outlook for week 15. But I wouldn't be surprised if he plays. And we did see the one game when Marvin Harrison came back post Michael Wilson breakout. It was Marvin Harrison reinserted as the one. But it's like, how many times can Jacoby Brissett and Michael Wilson have this type of game together and then just not have that chemistry continue? So I'm still of the mindset that even when Marvin Harrison Jr. returns, and keep in mind they play Atlanta at home in week 16, Cincinnati in week 17, I still think Michael Wilson's a rock solid play. So obviously without Marvin Harrison, Michael Wilson's literally like a 10 out of 10 for me in trustworthy scale. With Marvin Harrison back on the field, I'm still going to be starting him. I still think I put him at like a 6 to 6.5. Yep. How you know? I guess I could touch on the backfield a little bit here. It doesn't look like Trey Benson's going to return, so it's going to be Bam Knight. It's going to be Michael Carter splitting shit. I mean, against the Rams, you're not going to have success, but in better matchups, like Zonovan Knight has been like a low-end RB2. So they play Houston next week, but Atlanta, Cincinnati after that are 2 good matchups. So keep holding on to him. Last game, Sunday Night Football. The Texans basically eliminate the Kansas City Chiefs from the playoffs, 20-10 in the Woke game. Stroud, 203 and a touchdown. Woody Marks, 26 carries, 68 yards. Does get 2 catches, 8 yards, a touchdown. So he gets it done for fantasy. Barely, but he does because of the end zone score. Nico, 4 for 121. Big game for him. Jaden Higgins continues to operate as the wide receiver 2. However, it's kind of basically what I've been saying for the last couple of weeks. It's like you want to trust him, but they're just not leveling him up in terms of snaps. Like when we look at the routes run here, Nico, 94. But Jaden Higgins, like, they're still right on his fucking tail. Like, yes, wide receiver 2, getting the targets. Noel, 49%. Xavier Hutchinson, 49%. Christian Kirk, 43%. Higgins at 54%. So it's like, it's just hard to trust a player in your lineup that is only running a route on 54% of dropbacks. So, yeah, take that for what you want. They do get Arizona next week at home, Las Vegas at home the week after that. So you do get 2 really good matchups, and I definitely think Jaden Higgins is flexible in those matchups. But, yeah, I mean, these are the types of games you're going to get when the passing game does not necessarily click for Jaden Higgins. So trustworthy level, I would say Woody Marks, yeah, he's just not been efficient on the ground, but they do get good matchups again over the next couple of weeks. So I would put Woody Marks. I think he got banged up in this game, but I didn't see any like real reports from him, by him, about him. Let's actually do a quick Twitter search to see if there's any updates. Bitch, who do you love? Yeah, I'm not seeing anything. So maybe he just left, came back, whatever. Apologies for not having that on deck. Yeah, I mean the usage is fucking phenomenal and the matchups are good. So Woody Marks at this point clearly like isn't really showing a ceiling, but that type of usage is crazy. So I'd put him at like a 7. And then the Chiefs, the other side, Mahomes, 3 interceptions. Kareem Hunt gets into the end zone. Rashee Rice has a really bad game, 4 for 34, drop. Travis Kelce has that drop at the end. Like, this is a bad day for Kansas City, man. Houston's defense is so fucking good right now. Kansas City gets the Chargers at home next week, at Tennessee, then Denver at home the week after that. So yeah, I mean, I don't even know who I should talk about on the Chiefs side of the ball. I might just go down all of the players. Patrick Mahomes, trustworthy level. Yeah, I'm not overly concerned about him. I would still put him at like an 8 out of 10. He was maybe not the quarterback 1 anymore because of Josh Allen, but he's damn close to it. Backfield, Kareem Hunt. I mean, this was a tough matchup, but he's still pretty much the guy, I would say. Isaiah Pacheco did get the start here, but Kareem Hunt, again, ends up with the touchdown, ends up out carrying him here. Let's look at the backfield split, though. Still 60% in favor of Hunt over Pacheco here, still running the majority of the routes. Brashard Smith has been completely phased out of the offense. So I'd put Kareem Hunt at like a 5.5-ish because the ceiling is obviously zapped here. Unless Pacheco misses time. Xavier Worthy, I'd still put out like a 3 out of 10. Rashee Rice, I still feel great about Rashee when it's not an impossible matchup here. So Rashee's still going to be like an 8.5 out of 10. His ceiling's crazy. And then Travis Kelce. Kelce's been good most of the year, so I don't want to like just kill him for this one game. I'd still put him at like a 7 out of 10, I think, going forward. Also, obviously, should be noted, the Chiefs were without like half of their starting line. Honestly, more than half of their starting linemen right now. They also had another offensive lineman go down early on in this game, so they're without their tackles. They're without like so many good players that they never really stood a chance against this D line for the Houston Texans. So not great. Hopefully they can get a couple of those guys back for the fantasy playoffs. And 52 minutes. What am I doing, Nick? We're on a bye week. We can't be going for 52 minutes streaming. Want to leave you with this, though. Again, if you want to support the brand, if you want to support yourself throughout this season, throughout the dynasty season, throughout next draft season, and then 14 weeks into the following season, get a Fantasy Life Plus subscription, y'all. Use code BDGE when you get it. FantasyLife.com. Go get a subscription. BDGE will get you 20% off any subscription on the site. All right? My throat is on fire. I need some water. I love you. Thank you for hanging out with me today. As always, tomorrow, waiver wire video around noon Eastern time. Hit the button that looks like this if you enjoyed. Thank you. Love you. Smoochies. We need Saquon Barkley to get 12.5 points tonight in PPR, and I don't feel fucking good about it. That is disgraceful. Terrible.